During my 2023 mission trip to Kenya, I was able to spend a day visiting a small village in Kwale, which is just south of Mombasa. During that visit to Kwale, I became aware of the culture and character of the small village in rural Africa, rural Kenya. I did not become an expert by any stretch, but I was exposed to it. And you can find more about that initial visit on a previous episode. Just go back and check it out. I think you'll enjoy it. It's called a Mzungu in Kwale. A Mzungu is basically a white person.
Oh, okay.
It's a European or American white person. And a white person sticks out in these parts. In fact, I was probably the second white preacher, maybe the second white person to visit this village in Kwale. So there's the obvious difference. And then there's the not so obvious difference. And that's what I became aware of during that visit as well. You see, during our time fellowshipping and enjoying a little get-together after the service we had there, I was able to speak with the pastor and some of the leaders. One of the things I asked Pastor Cosmos was, what is the strength of your church? What would you say is the thing that your church is really strong in? And he answered pretty quickly, prayer. For them, prayer is a strong part of their church. And it makes sense because they put a lot of value in prayer. And then I asked him, what would you say is the greatest challenge of your church? What's the greatest difficulty you have? And he thought for a little bit and then came back with an answer. You could tell it was kind of a slow answer because he had just given a very spiritual answer with prayer being the strongest point. And he came back on the second question. The greatest challenge of his church would be access to water. Water is the greatest challenge they have. Of course, that doesn't sound very spiritual, right? But it's very real. And that makes it spiritual because God has given us a need for it to live. A lot of people in America and a lot of people around the world spend a lot of money digging wells in Africa. If I said the phrase digging wells in Africa, you would basically know what I'm talking about. But do we know what we're talking about? Because on this day, I was able to dive a little deeper into the conversation with Pastor Cosmos and his people with an interpreter, Pastor Ben. And I just so happened to turn on my voice recorder on my phone to catch the conversation. And I really honestly had thought to myself, well, I'll just get some background conversation in their language to use in my videos. But it turns out I was able to get some very, very, very important information about what it means to need water and to need a well. So the conversation you are about to hear is real. It's not staged. It was the original conversation, and I hope it informs you and inspires you and challenges you, because on that day, their challenge became my challenge, and I brought back a burden for something I did not even know really existed. I mean, I knew it existed, but I didn't know it existed. You know, I knew it in my head. I didn't know it in my heart. And this conversation helped move it that 18 inches from my head to my heart. So, here we go. A conversation about the greatest challenge, the greatest need in a small village in Kenya.
There's a perennial problem of lack of rain in this area. So their farming has really been crippled. So he was thinking that if he's able to drill a well and get enough water, that water will be enough for the church, even for the family, and the members will come and get water from there. So he had started doing that work of trying to dig the well. He went some distance, but water has not come out. So he needed help maybe to drill much deeper. And if there's water, you know, water is the main need here. Because where they try to get water sometimes when it doesn't rain, it dries up. So that's the biggest challenge. It has been difficult.
Yeah. All right. Currently, how much time does it take to walk from here to the closest good well, get the water, and come back?
Inachukua muda gani kutoka hapa kwenda mahali kuna maji, kuchota maji? Dakika ngapi kutembea?
Ni kama nusu saa.
Half an hour.
Half an hour. Yeah. Okay. And that's to carry how much water?
Na mtu anaweza beba maji kiasi gani?
Mtungi moja kwa kichwa.
20 liters.
20 liters. That's 10 gallons.
Yeah.
Right? Am I right?
Yeah, 2 and 4, that would be 1 hour. Because you have to go and you have to come back. One trip, you go 30 minutes, you pick the water. Another 30 minutes to come home. That's 1 hour.
So over 1 hour.
That's
for 10 gallons.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it means you don't go once. Because the 10 gallons could be just for drinking. Now you have to go and pick for other uses. You also maybe you pick like another 10 gallons, or another 20 gallons, or 30 gallons for cooking, washing, and all that.
Okay. So in 1 week, how many 10-gallon trips would you take? Do you take?
Wiki moja mtu anaweza enda safari ngapi kisimani? Tatu.
Maana kwa siku moja unaweza kuwa unatumia mitungi 6.
6
Good,
gallons.
very good. I like that. I tell him I only eat something twice if I like it. I like it.
Per day you need 120 liters.
Okay. 60 gallons for 1 week.
Yeah, for a week.
60 gallons covers you for a week.
Yeah.
So that means you're having to make 6 trips.
Yeah.
Basically once a day.
As Pastor Cosmas is explaining to me the challenge of having access to water, my mind started to open up and process it pretty quickly to make it real to me, because that's what we Americans do. It has to be real to us, right? Well, it's just how I process things, and I wanted to understand. So as he's talking about how much water they have to get and how often they have to go and how far they have to go, I started wondering how much water. I asked how much water they use. I started wondering how much water we use, and it turns out, just fun fact here, the average American uses about 15 gallons of water while taking a shower. Okay. And I laugh only to not cry, because they use 60 gallons a week for a family, a small family. We use that much water in 4 showers in a week. That means before we drink anything, before we do any clothes washing, before we do all this other stuff that we do, before we water our beautiful plants, we use 15 gallons of water in a shower, and they use 60 gallons in a week for a small family. So there you go. That's a little perspective for you. Fun fact, if you will. As we're talking, it starts to dawn on me that I'm about to be a part of digging a well in Africa. I mean, not physically me getting down in the hole and digging. He's already done a lot of that, to be honest with you. But I am going to bring home to America, to our family, to our church, to our community, a project. I mean, I can't be in this conversation and not be a part of the solution, right? Am I right? Please tell me I'm right. Please tell me I'm not the only one that gets into these conversations and realizes, well, you're in now, pal. You are in for sure. But what happens is, as he talks about the challenge of water, I start to think about how it affects me personally. And one of the first things that came to my mind, as we're sitting there, as I'm trying to ask questions, to be more informed, to learn more, to understand, to be more inspired, as I'm trying to think of questions, it dawns on me that they washed my hands earlier with a jug of water before we ate. And it was dawning on me that they don't have running water, unless you count it as somebody has to actually run physically and get water and bring it back, which is what's happening. So there were no, sinks and spigots and faucets and all that. And so I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, wait a minute, they washed my hands earlier because that's how you wash hands here. I know I'm slow, so I'm sorry, but this is how it was coming to me real fast. So I thought to myself, wait a minute. So now I realize they don't have water coming out of the ground somewhere around their house to get that water. So where did that water come from to wash my hands? And then it dawned on me. Somebody walked an hour, a half hour each way. Somebody walked an hour so I could wash my hands. And I'll be honest with you. Nobody's ever walked an hour for me to wash my hands in my entire life. I've never walked an hour to wash my hands my entire life. And that was humbling. That was cold water in your face. That was a very interesting moment, because that water became worth a great deal. And it meant that I was worth a great deal because someone had actually gone to such great lengths, literally, to get some water so I could wash my hands. Has anybody ever walked an hour so your hands could be clean? I mean, so then it kind of branched out from that, and I thought, well, if that's what they did for the water to wash my hands, that water just flowed over my hands, and I didn't think about it, except that it was different because I don't have people pour water over my hands. If that's true for that, then what about this tea that I'm drinking? Where'd that water come from? Well, obviously the same place. So now I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, so somebody walked an hour so I could drink tea. Again, nobody's ever done that in my life. So the things that nobody's ever done in my life impressed me, that this has happened like once now in my life, to where someone has literally walked an hour, a mile basically, to have water for me. But this is how they live all the time, to the point that they probably don't think about it the same way that I do. Like, I'm sure they think about it every time they have to go get water, right? But they don't think about it like I think about it. Like, to me, it was a very special thing, and to them, it's just everyday life. And here's the thing. Nobody was complaining about the fact that they had to walk an hour so this Mzungu could wash his white hands. They were glad that it happened. And here I am. I'm melting in my seat listening to all these facts, these statistics, these details, these things that are changing my mind and my life and my heart about so many things. So, somebody walked an hour so I could wash my hands. I want you to hear that part. That's what stuck with me. Someone walked an hour so I could have water to wash my hands. I mean, I could probably just turn the video off right now and we'd be done. I want you to think about that. Has anybody ever walked an hour for you to wash your hands? Have they ever walked an hour so you could have something to drink? Imagine if someone had not walked that hour that day for me to have something to drink. So there you go. There's the challenge in Kwale. It's pretty straightforward. The story itself is pretty straightforward. The facts are very straightforward, and they get stuck in your head pretty good. But the story gets stuck in your heart. So the cold, hard facts are that a lot of people do not have easy access to water or any access to water, especially depending on the time of year and what's happening with the rains. The story is that I would not have had access to water that day, except for the fact that someone took a trip to get it for me. And so there you have it. So what do we do? Well, I think we have to let that story sit in our hearts. Not too long. Somebody's thirsty, but I mean, they've been going to get water for a long time, right? This is not a new thing for them. It's a new idea for me, but it's not a new thing for them. And again, they're not complaining, but it hits me hard. And so I have to do some things about it. So I have to think about it, and I have to pray about it, and I have to realize that something has got to be done, and God brought me here on this day. Interestingly enough, the pastor said that the greatest strength of their church was prayer. The greatest need was water. The greatest challenge was water. And here's the opportunity for those two things to come together. I'm sure they've prayed for water. Not just a water pipe to their house. Most people out there know that's never going to happen, or at least not in their lifetime, maybe. But I'm sure many times as they walked, they prayed that water would come more easily, that they would have more access to water, that their children would not have to spend so much time and effort and difficulties and danger to get water. And so here's an opportunity where their prayer and their challenge were in a collision course with me that day. So go make yourself a cup of tea, wash your hands, get you a shower, and in the next video, you will see what happens when a Mzungu in Kwale learns about the challenge in Kwale. This video right here, it's some painful stuff. It's some real stuff, but it's some good stuff.